Hey, welcome into the Stinkin Truth Podcast. Mark Schlereth alongside Mike Evans. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for joining us today. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. I can't wait to jump right into this because I know how much you enjoy taking your little digs, your little pot shots at wide receivers from time to time. So I got to know, what was your reaction when you heard about the Justin Jefferson historic deal? Some $140 million, $110 million of it guaranteed, almost $90 million of it up front. What do you think of the deal?
Loved it. Because, one, I'm a big Justin Jefferson fan. I don't know if you ever saw the video of him teaching me how to do that dance he does in the end zone.
No.
No, you never saw that?
I never saw that.
You never saw that video?
How'd that come about?
Well, because I had him as part of the crew, in our interviews. I was doing a Minnesota game, and so I had him come up there, and then he showed me, how to do the whole thing, and it was hilarious. He's a great kid, hard worker, does everything, super smart, can play every position, and he's phenomenal, man. As a player, it's interesting. So when I was an analyst at ESPN, I had asked a bunch of former DBs and DBs that played in the league, just asked them about covering Jerry Rice. And because, Jerry Rice wasn't, he's a 4.6 guy out of college, out of Mississippi Valley State. And so he was not like a burner or anything. And basically the conversation always went kind of the same way. Is Jerry Rice precision and route running ability and his breaks in and out of routes, he never tips a route. So at the top of the stem is what they call it, when you're breaking one way or the other. The DBs were just like that I talked to were like, you just got to guess. Like, I think he's running out here, right? And then all of a sudden he's in, and he's like, and you're like, shoot, missed that one. So it was just his ability to do that. And the other thing, I think when you're looking at, just receivers, Justin Jefferson has that, where he's not tipping his routes based upon the way he's running them. The other thing that's interesting is he just eats space between him and the DB. He gets on your toes instantly. And that's always been the big thing about, when you talk to receiver coaches around the league, is there's two things. It's not your ability to run fast, it's your ability to stop fast. For a great wide receiver, your ability to stop fast is far more important than your ability to run fast. So in and out of breaks, coming back to the ball, all that kind of stuff. And then can you eat that space and get on the toes of the DB? Because once you get on the toes of the DB is kind of screwed, right? He doesn't keep that cushion where he can break and he can move with you. So how quickly can you close that ground, get on his toes, and then get out of your break? And those are the things that kind of set guys apart. And Justin Jefferson is as good as there is in this league, if not better than most in this league.
And his deal continues an explosion of big deals that are being given to wide receivers of late.
Right.
What message is the NFL sending all of us with that?
Well, why would you play any other position? On offense. I mean, there's a reason there's fewer and fewer guys playing running back, or guys don't get drafted in the first round to play running back. There's a reason 7-on-7 leagues have been created. There's a reason that college football doesn't produce, that's when you watch college football, when you're breaking down, when I was looking at all the quarterbacks for the draft, you get into these offenses, their base personnel group is 4 wides. There's a ton of 4 wide personnel groupings in the college game, and they stay in them. Why? Because that's what you produce. That's what the high schools produce because of these 7-on-7 leagues.
But if there's so many of these receivers coming out and there's a steady supply chain of receivers, why pay them then?
Well, because they're not all created equal. They're not all great. They're not all that way. I mean, it's your ability to stop fast, your ability to get on people's toes, in and out of breaks, your ability to catch the ball in tight spaces, your ability to, to attack the ball in the air. You're like there's some guys that have, it's kind of like the baseball player being a 5-tool player. Can you stop fast? Can you run fast? Can you get in and out breaks? Can you eat up cushion? Do you have great hands? Do you attack the ball in the air? Like all these, like the combination of all those things makes a player great. So I think that's the reason. The other thing that I was going to get to with the college football thing with all these receiver sets is, you get in the NFL, you're in 4 wides, maybe once, every couple of weeks. If you're throwing a Hail Mary, that's not a personnel grouping you get into very often. So it's just it's another kind of difference between the NFL and college football.
So for a long time, I've always held the opinion that wide receivers play a dependent position. Mm-hmm. And that if you're a team that, especially if you feel like you have your guy at quarterback, the so-called franchise quarterback, that you shouldn't overinvest in wide receivers, because isn't that the job of the quarterback to make receivers coming out of college that you've drafted cheap better than they really are? Mm-hmm. So has that changed? Do I have to change my view of the importance of wide receivers and the notion that they play a dependent position? Because I looked at, with this Jefferson deal, 9 of the top 10 paid receivers as of right now for next season in the NFL. Only 1 of those 10 receivers have ever won a Super Bowl. 9 of the highest...
Right. Cooper Kupp?
Correct. 9 of the 10 highest paid receivers for next year haven't won a Super Bowl. So if you're investing that kind of money in a receiver, are you spending your money the right way?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think we do overpay the position to a degree, but there is incredible value in a guy that like for instance, I'll go back to Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Aaron had talked about and talked to me about is, one of the things that I was convinced when Matt LaFleur took over the Green Bay Packers is let the scheme dictate in first and second down. But in third down is that's me. And third down, I'm going to pick my matchup, and the matchup I like best based upon the way the defense plays. And there's probably no matchup I like better than Devontae against anybody, even double teamed. So, there's that comfort, and there's that ability to convert in those instances. And I think it's fascinating. One of the other things, just on a tangent, now that I'm thinking about it, this goes back to me, the importance of being able to run the football. And I don't know, I've never looked this up, but I bet you, maybe somebody could look it up, I bet you that there's not a large difference. So you categorize third downs, like third down and 3-, for instance. Third down and 4 to 6, third down and 7+. And you categorize all those things. I bet you conversion rates in the run game for third down and 4 to 6 are about the same percentages conversions in the passing game, third down and 4 to 6. But in third down and 4 to 6 in this league is all 100% almost pass, right? And like a team that really has a great nickel run game that really leans into running the ball on third down and 4, third down and 5, really understands how to do that. Because, one, you're going to get tiny people. Like anytime you break into those situations where they're passing situations and you're in 11 personnel, what you're going to get is, you're going to get DBs playing linebacker. And if I can get a 335-pound guard on a DB, that's a win for me, right? 100% of the time. And so the other thing that'll come into, and it'll be interesting to watch this kind of progression. If you have a good third down running game with your propensity to go for it on fourth down now, why not run the ball on third down knowing, hey, man, we're going to have a favorable matchup. If we don't convert, odds are we're going to be in fourth down and 1, fourth down and 2, and then that becomes third down becomes our new second down, and fourth down becomes our new third down. And how many teams start using that kind of philosophical approach to now you got to have an identity and you got to know what you're doing in the run game, but it'll just be interesting. But I bet you the conversion rates are not much different between 3rd down and 4 to 6 passing and running. Now you're having a lot more of a sample size throwing the ball in 3rd down and 4 to 6, but I bet you the conversion rates aren't that much different.
Well,
Mike.
What you say makes a lot of sense, but then it would test the whole theory of these coaches out there that are just looking for an excuse to say, "Oh, can't run the football."
Got to throw it.
Oh, got to throw it.
Got to throw it.
We tried.
Yeah.
We tried.
Dang, we're only getting 2 yards a carry, but we'll throw 7 interceptions or throw 70 completions in a row. I'll never understand that.
Smart
philosophy.
coach may come along and will actually test that theory and prove you right. I could maybe even see a guy like Jim Harbaugh coming along and do that. I could easily see a guy like Harbaugh saying,
couldn't you?
"No, wait a minute. I'm in the part of the field where I know I'm going to go for it on 4th down. It's 3rd and 6.
Well, it's what Dan Campbell's
Why don't I
doing.
just run it for a free 4 yards, and now I got a manageable 4th and 2?
It's what Dan Campbell's doing in Detroit right now. Yeah. Detroit, I mentioned this on a broadcast I did Detroit late in the season. Detroit had the best 3rd down, and I got it because I'm watching, 3 or 4 games, and I'm like, their conversion rate on 3rd downs, I mean, they're running on 3rd and 7+. And I was like, man, this is the best. I just put a note to myself. This is the best 3rd down rush team I've watched on tape. And so I sent it to, our broadcast associate, our BA, Johnny Boy. I said, hey, Johnny, man, do me a favor. Go to Elias. He's got all the connections with Elias, and go, who's the best 3rd down running team in football? And like I did a 3rd down in, 4 to 6 or whatever it was. And lo and behold, exactly what I had seen on film. Detroit had the best conversion rate on 3rd down runs of any team. And it's because their coach is going to go for it on 4th down. Even in his own territory at times, he'll go for it on 4th down.
Who else was on that list? High up. Do you remember?
I don't remember. I just know that they were the number 1 team in football.
I'm just curious because, the NFL being what the NFL is, a copycat league. And with Detroit now having had the success that they had last year, maybe you might just start seeing.
If they were 3, I would have known 1 and 2. So I have references. But when you're 1, you're 1.
You stop right there.
Yeah, I just
because you're really not interested in putting any more work in after that.
Exactly. Like I know that at that point, I've already proven my point. Yes. My film study is correct. I am right. I'm sure whatever I'm thinking is correct. Boom, I've proven it. From Elias.
Yes.
And I move on.
Exactly.
There's no need to dig any deeper.
On to the next task.
Right.
The next challenge.
Exactly.
So if wide receivers are getting paid now, what does it say about running backs not getting paid, and why the Christian McCaffrey move this week?
Right.
San Francisco adding 2 more years onto his deal, now taking him through the next 4 years. San Francisco doesn't seem to have an unwillingness to pay Christian McCaffrey, but you're seeing high-profile running backs struggling to sign big deals, even from the teams that had him. Saquon Barkley, for example.
Sure.
How galling must it be for Giant fans to know that not only did the Giants not bring back Saquon Barkley, but he's going to be playing for Philadelphia.
Right.
So what's going on? Why is Christian McCaffrey the outlier when all these other running backs aren't getting paid and are being forced to move on?
So I was having a conversation with Sean Payton the other day just about what he calls the joker position. And I think we think of the joker position as some guy that's not necessarily defined as a positional player. So you go back to Taysom Hill and how Taysom Hill was a joker in the Saints offense in that he could line up at quarterback, he could throw the ball, he could run the ball, he lined up at tight end, the Y, which is the blocking tight end, lined up as the F, which is the motion and movement tight end, more the receiving tight end. He lined up at F as the slot receiver. He lined up at Z, and he lined up at X. At the end of the day, he's lining up in 7 different positions. And so when you break the huddle as a coordinator, or when you see all of a sudden him shuffling onto the field, you have to go, all right, who'd they take off? Did they take the quarterback off? Because now he's playing quarterback. But he could also be the running guy in the run quarterback situation. Are they playing traditional quarterback, or are they going to run a quarterback run play, like quarterback counter? Like, so is the fullback in there with him? Because if the fullback's in there with him, there could be a motion, it could be QB counter, right? Like, so now you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, they didn't take the quarterback off, so now is he playing tight end? Is he playing the F tight end? Are they in 2 tights? Is there only one tight end? Is he that guy? Or, oh, wait a minute, is he the F? Like, is he a slot receiver? So there's all these machinations that go through your head where you got to figure out what this guy's playing. So, but it becomes more than that. So you can be a tight end like Sam Laporta for Detroit. That dude can line up a tight end. That guy can line up a fullback. You could be Kittle. Or you could be Juszczyk at the fullback position. Juszczyk can line up at fullback. He can line up at tailback. You can line up at tight end. You know, you can split outside the numbers. So, if you become a true joker or a true weapon, like the difference between Christian McCaffrey and the rest of the backs in the league is he's an offensive weapon. He plays running back, but when he lines up as a slot receiver or when he lines up out of the backfield, now he becomes a receiver. And if you remember back to his Stanford days, there were people that thought he was too small to run between the tackles. Christian runs hard between the tackles. He's got a great sense of how to alleviate some of the big hits. Most of the injuries he had when he was in Carolina were soft tissue things, but he hasn't been hurt a ton. He's been exceptionally productive. And there were scouts and personnel people on television and elsewhere that when he came out of Stanford, they were saying maybe he's best suited to play wide receiver or slot receiver because he is so damn good at route running. So when most running backs catch 40 balls or 50 balls, it's all the check burst, it's all check flat, it's all check seam, it's all the running back routes, little Texas route, it's all those routes. Christian, when he lines up outside the numbers, like most of the time, if you motion him back outside the numbers, right? You watch film. They motion him outside the number. They're the widest guy out there. You know what they do? Little stop route. They're running basically a smash, and they're trying to get something behind it, right? Mm-hmm. So eat the corner up, right? Eat the flat eat the flat defender up, and see if you can get something behind it. That's what they're doing. They're not really running routes. They're just trying to occupy space. Mm-hmm. Christian's running routes out there. He's running like the receiver route tree. So he's getting paid because he is not only a running back, but he's an offensive weapon that can play multiple positions. And how many times have you seen all of a sudden Christian, motion out of the backfield, and all of a sudden Debo come in and Debo is running the ball, or Christian is running a route, or vice versa. So I think that's why they're less hesitant to pay Christian McCaffrey than they are the rest of the running backs.
So he's a 1 out of 1 then, right? So because when you think of other dual threat running backs, and I think about a Saquon Barkley or Austin Eckler, somebody like that, they are dual threat, but still not to the level of Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, when they're catching the ball in the back, their check swing, their screen ball, and Christian runs all that stuff.
Right.
But he still runs routes in the route tree as well. So I think there's probably just a little difference in the way that San Francisco views him and says, hey, man, it really comes down to how do we get the ball in his hands, how many touches do we get him, and where do we get him those touches? So all of a sudden you're saying, okay, this guy's going to have, 16 carries a game, but he's going to touch the ball at least 26 times. Right. And we're going to get him the ball in space where, he's one-on-one with the corner. And that doesn't scare us like all those in between the tackle runs, or, hey, we're going to run a screen that's still, in the meat of the defense. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just a little different the way they look at him. So they're not as concerned about the wear and tear on a guy like him as maybe the Giants were on Saquon Barkley.
I got you. All right, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious also, in your NFL travels, have you seen any young running backs that perhaps early on are showing some of those traits that McCaffrey has? I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, like a Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit.
Yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs. They do a lot of that with Jahmyr Gibbs. Bijan Robinson is another guy that they're doing like those. But Christian McCaffrey is kind of the guy that is the prototype for that next guy coming out. Those two guys, I would say, have that that ability where you get into what they call 21 pony, for instance, two backs, and they're two really legitimate tailbacks. But so they did it with Montgomery and Gibbs in Detroit, right? Now all of a sudden Gibbs motions out and Gibbs becomes a receiver. And so there's some teams that are kind of taking that kind of thought process to the running back position.
I can just see general managers now all around the NFL going to their scouts and their scout meetings and say, "Hey, go find me another Christian McCaffrey."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done. You got you brought this to my attention because anytime anything involves the offensive line, I think little bells go off in your head. You were wanting to talk about Chris Forrester, who's the offensive line coach for the San Francisco 49ers, was talking about the idea that their belief in San Francisco is that you can find offensive linemen in rounds 3, 4, and 5, and that you want to save your high picks, your premium picks, your first and second round picks for maybe guys that are closer,
Well, they either touch the ball, right, or disrupt the potential of catching
Is that a good strategy?
No, I think it is. I think it is. Now, that said, you have Trent Williams, who may be one of the greatest football players in the history of football, playing left tackle for you, who was a former first rounder, right? But I think the general philosophy is I can get guys that are great, that can become really good NFL players in a little bit later rounds to create that offensive line. So I think the thing about O-line play is that I can't be good unless we're good. And so there's this mentality to offensive line play where it really is about the five of us playing so together and so connected that we have the ability to take a guy who maybe not the greatest individual player, but within the context of our group, that team within the team, can be a really vital kind of cog to our line group. And so, I think, as my coach Alex Gibbs used to say all the time, I can get, hobos off a train to play guards and center. I just need me a good left tackle. I think now you kind of need both tackles to be athletic enough and good enough to really, shut down great runner or great pass rushers. But I think there's a lot of truth to what Forrester says. Then the other thing I think that's really interesting to me is what style do you play in the collegiate game? And so, who plays a little bit more pro style in the college game, and how do those kids, even if they're from smaller schools, how do those kids translate to the National Football League? Like in Tampa Bay, Jason Light does a great job of scouting, players that are Division III players that play offensive line for him, like guys that are Division II and Division III players that become great players. Here in Denver, we have a guy by the name of
Quinn Miners, Division III school, and has become one of the more dominant run blocking guards in football. Yeah, because if you've got one of these wide open spread teams that you see all over the Pac-12 or Big 12,
right, and
they're throwing the ball 60 times a game, how do you really evaluate an offensive lineman? Yeah,
are you able to come off the ball? And some of those guys are great, great at pass pro and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot that you can look at from a film study standpoint. And then, as I always tell you, it's the most skilled position in football. So, do you have good feet and hands? Do you understand how to funnel a guy where you want a guy? Do you understand where your help is coming from? Do you have a more of a? It's almost like evaluating quarterbacks to a degree. Is you have a better kind of global complex or global perspective of the game, and you can see a lot of that stuff on tape.
So your old offensive line coach Alex Gibbs would sarcastically refer to guards and centers as hobos.
Yeah, hobos off.
Nobody
train.
would ever call Larry Allen a hobo off the train.
Shoot, no.
That guy, we lost him over the weekend, his sudden passing, and it's been amazing to hear football people talk about Larry Allen and his exploits and what he was as a player, and pretty much unanimously agreed upon this is one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time, maybe the greatest left guard of all time. But yet he also played tackle at a level that you could have put him at that level too, right?
The Pro Bowls at both guards, at the tackle position, didn't matter what he played. He was that dominant player. I would categorize Larry Allen as one of the best football players, maybe top 10 football players ever play the game.
Football player.
At any position.
Yeah.
At any position. That dude, and pound for pound, I put him as maybe one of, if not the greatest athlete that's ever played in the history of the National Football League. Dude, you got to understand, Larry Allen would run a sub at 345, 335, 340. Run a sub 540. Could stand flat-footed underneath a rim and dunk a basketball. They could lay down on a bench and bench press 700 pounds. do you want to talk about freak show?
Yeah.
Like, legitimately, like, there are guys that I used to study all the time. Be like, hey, man, I'm playing Warren Sapp, or I'm playing, John Randall, or I'm playing, list the great players that played. Give me some film of Steve Wisniewski. How did Steve Wisniewski set this guy? How did Bruce Matthews set this guy? Like, Larry Allen film was useless.
You were watching a unicorn.
Right. You were watching a guy, you're like, in a million billion years, I couldn't do what he just did.
Right.
It was useless. So you're like, scrap pile that game. Yeah. I'm not going to watch it. It does me no good to watch it. Larry Allen, literally, we used to call him lovingly in our own room the landlord. We nicknamed him the landlord because he owned all the real estate between center and tackle. That was his. He owned it. There are so many guys that got the Larry Allen flu. The Larry Allen flu was real. Dudes would like, oh, shoot, I don't want to line up against Larry Allen. Like, I just don't want to have anything to do with L.A. today.
My hamstring just popped.
Oh, dude, I don't know. I woke up with a stomach, my sore tummy, and I don't. Dude, he was that dominant a football player. Nice, just like the nicest guy you've ever want to meet, but just an absolute beast on the football field. An absolute beast. Crazy good.
Sean Payton was saying the other day, he said that he and Bill Parcells would sometimes talk about the Hall of Fame. And he said, sure, these are the greatest players ever. Mm-hmm. He said, but even within the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, there's a Hall of Fame in the Hall of Fame.
There's a Hall of Fame in the Hall of Fame. And they would play the game of, if you had to put together a starting lineup out of Hall of Fame players, who would make up your starting team? And unanimously, they would always come back to the idea that Larry Allen is our left guard.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
without a doubt.
Yeah.
You could debate other positions, but Larry Allen is the left guard.
Yeah. Larry Allen was just a full-grown ass man. And he was something special, man.
So,
I love watching guys like that. Some of the highlights and the tributes to Larry Allen. I'm telling you, I just really heartbroken for him, his family, but boy, I tell you what, it's been fun to reminisce about that dude, because that dude, like you said, that dude was a unicorn. He was a freak show.
At a time when that offensive line in Dallas was just, whew. But I got to ask you about the Cowboys. We were talking about the Justin Jefferson deal.
Yeah.
CD Lamb doesn't have a deal.
Right.
We see quarterbacks getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
Dak Prescott doesn't have a deal. We know that when a really dynamic defensive player comes along, he tends to get paid. Micah Parsons hasn't gotten paid. What's going on in Dallas, Mark? Yeah. What's going on?
Don't you feel...
Cowboy fans want to know.
Yeah. Don't you feel like in Dallas, they're like pushing their chips into the table and saying, if we can't win with the talent that we've accumulated on right now, then next year we're going to blow this whole thing up.
So your plan as Jerry Jones is push everything into the middle of the table, and if it doesn't work out, we're going to let Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott, likes of these guys, just go?
I think you'll let Dak Prescott go because he's got like a $50 million cap hit right now or whatever it is. I don't know exactly what it is. But I think you'll let Dak Prescott go and use that cap savings with the cap money that continues to grow on getting CeeDee Lamb locked up long term, getting Micah Parsons locked up long term. But I mean, I can't imagine what else the plan would be. I have read some things about how they're really working on Trey Lance and like they're really grooming Trey Lance, to maybe be the next guy as the Dallas quarterback if they decide to go the way of the Minnesota Vikings and let Dak Prescott walk, like Minnesota did with Kirk Cousins.
So, and we'll wrap it up on this. So if this is indeed a push all the chips in, Dak Prescott, you got one last shot to prove you're the guy in Dallas, that you can win a championship in Dallas, and that you're worthy of the $60 million a year contract. Yeah. What's your gut feeling about what he does this year?
Dak Prescott is going to put up great numbers, just like Dak Prescott did last year and the year before and every year he's played.
Here comes the but.
Yeah. And the Cowboys will get into the playoffs like they always do, and then they'll get ramshackled like they always do.
They'll poop in their helmets.
Yeah, they will take a dump in their helmets like they always seem to do.
If that's the case, then what's the point? Move on.
Then they're going to move on.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you point the finger to Dak. I don't know how he's the reason that all of a sudden you get to the playoffs, and I think it's bigger than that. I think it really, to me, I always will go back to organizational structure. But I don't know. I mean, this looks like, to me, it looks like a push it all into the table and see what happens. So we're going to see.
Should make the Cowboys, who are always interesting, make them maybe even more fascinating this year.
Yep, that's why Tom Brady gets to call that Cowboys game week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yes.
Hey, for everybody involved in the Stink Truth podcast, we thank you so much for being a part of it. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back with you guys next week. Hey, for everybody involved in the Stinky Truth, we thank you so much. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel for more content just like this. If you want to see more of our videos, you can also be sure to check out our playlist. Let us know exactly what you think in the comments below. We appreciate you guys so much for being a part of that.
Don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.